Ooh, association chat. My friends, we are here, and you are not going to believe what today's episode is all about. I am even afraid of sharing it myself. I am telling you, my friends, that this is going to be unlike anything else you've ever seen. Now, you are getting me a little rough at the end of the day. Listeners, you're tuning into Association Chat, and I'm your host, Kiki L'Italien. I want you to get ready because today's episode is not just any regular broadcast. We're making podcast history. What do I mean? What do I mean by that? Well, I got to tell you that we had the absolute delight and the absolute, I don't want to say misfortune. It was like really, it was a great lucky chance to come together. This group of wildly creative people in the association industry, and I want you to imagine, I want you to close your eyes right now, wherever you are. If you're driving, don't close your eyes, but imagine if Avengers were association podcasters. It sounds wild, right? Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We've assembled the ultimate podcasting dream team for an episode that's going to potentially shake up the association world, if not the association world's podcast listening habits. And I, I want to share with you this episode that features masterminds behind the microphones: Dave Will of Association Strong Podcast, Ben Muscolino from the Association Podcast, Joanne Pineda of Association's Thrive Podcast, and Dave Coriel with Reboot Podcast from Delcor. Dave wrangled us all together. I'm blaming it on Dave. Okay. And these are the voices that have been guiding, challenging, and inspiring associations across the globe. Hopefully, across your podcast listening habits. We're diving into everything from cutting edge tech to community engagement secrets to I mean, you mentioned it, we actually talk about elves at some point, and we're doing it with some flair and depth that you would expect from a gathering of such incredible minds in the industry. Now, if you have comments, I might be the only one that's going live with this, live where I can actually see you interacting with me. So if you're watching this live, I didn't promote it widely. So if you're watching it live, you're one of the few. But if you're watching this later, feel free to comment, and hopefully I'll see your comments there. We're doing this live on the YouTube, the Association Chat YouTube stream, and also on a couple of other channels and on LinkedIn, right? So if you want to comment or have anything to share, then please do. And because it's me and because I just like to roll with things, we're going to do this mostly unedited. And I say it would be all unedited, except for the fact that I have the chance to pause and cut off the video. So it's mostly unedited, but we're going live from a pre-recorded video. I'm going to make some comments. This is probably a little scary for my fellow podcasters because they do a lot more editing, but that's what they get for inviting me to play with them on this collab. So hold on to your seats. This is Association Avengers Uniting Podcast Powerhouses. It's an episode that promises to be as informative as it is entertaining. Let's get started. I like it. All right, so we're going to get started. If you're watching this, go ahead and give me a little thumbs up or comment, and we're going to go ahead. I'm going to press play and let you see a little bit of this and also add some of my own commentary as we go along because, well, I just can't stay out of it. And you'll get to see a little bit of how these podcasters roll. I hope you enjoy. I really think we need to incorporate this in. I mean, it's like the reality,
It
right?
is the reality.
Dave, are you connected? I've never seen you still or quiet for this long in my life. So I just want to make sure you're not frozen.
I'm here, lover.
All right. All right. Very good.
We were
discussing with Kiki's gray right here and mine.
Good.
We could do a very good Rogue and Doctor Strange Halloween event. Yeah.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't have aren't compelled to have Marvel understanding.
Well, or if you read fantasy, you would make an amazing sorceress Polgara.
Ooh.
So
I don't
I'll send
know
you
who
a
that
reference.
is,
She's
please do.
Belgarath's daughter.
Oh, that sounds fascinating.
Yeah, oh, she's a great sorceress.
We don't even know who that is. All righty. All right. Well, we have an hour to do a half hour's worth of work.
Wait.
Okay.
Wait. That sounds about right.
Which is the opposite of the rest of our lives, pretty much, right? We have
That's true. Usually you have 2 hours to do a week's worth of work.
Yeah.
All right. Are you guys ready?
I think so.
All right. This is exciting. This is the gathering of the podcasters, some of the podcasters, right? So we have all chatted before about the podcast community here in the association community and how we put out content and support each other. And we've tried to get together at ASAE Annual. Some of us have. We've pitched Podcasters Unite as an ASAE annual session, right? So we're doing it on our own here. We're gonna get together, and this is great because we're gonna talk about what we see in the community, what we're contributing to the community, what we're hearing from the community. So before we even get started, why don't we do the quick round robin and do introductions? I'm gonna MC a bit, so I will start in my upper left and go with the OG podcaster from this community, Kiki L'Italian, and hear about what you're doing.
All right. Kiki L'Italian, Association Chat Podcast, since 2009, right? Well, it wasn't a podcast in 2009, but Association Chat started in 2009. And
on Twitter,
Acid Chat,
right.
Most pornographic sounding hashtag ever. Thank you. Yeah. So, and what am I doing? Actually, as we're wrapping up 2023, what I'm doing right now with Association Chat is figuring out what 2024 is going to look like. And I am going back. This is actually a great excuse for going back through the previous year and planning what's going to happen next. So that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. And I'm next in my view. So I'm Dave Coryell, President of Delcor, and this is my 5th season of Reboot IT, the 501c IT podcast. And for this season, we're focusing on a couple of different things. One is keeping up with Microsoft, because we all know what hamster wheel that's like for most IT professionals. Another one is Ask the Delcorians, so I can align some Delcorians with what's being asked in the community. And we're, of course, focusing on topics like cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, things that are important for us to keep on top of. And then lastly, what we've discovered is one of the titles that leads to more listeners for some reason is Dave's worked up about blank. So I'm going to get worked up about some stuff this year. And we're going to have a series of Dave got worked up about something. So that's what's going on Reboot. And next on my view is the effervescent Ben Muscolino.
All right. Before we go to Ben and the effervescent Ben Muscolino, I would love for you to be typing in, if you are watching this live, let me know, or if you're listening to it later, let me know in the comments if you can, on some of the social media sites that we're on. Go ahead and let me know in the comments if there are any of these podcasts that you listen to regularly, if you like listening to them, if you like watching them, like how you actually take in some of these, or if they're totally new. I would love to hear, and I'm sure the others on this podcast would love to hear, what your listening habits are like and how you take that in, because that's one of the things we've been talking about as podcasters, and in some of these other conversations leading up to this, like, what do people prefer? What do they like? Do they listen to us in a number of different ways? Do they prefer audio versus video? So go ahead and let me know if you have a chance, and we're going to get back to the recording.
Hi, everybody. Ben Muscolino. What am I supposed to say in my intro here, Dave?
I just
You
want to pause
introduced
for
your
effervescent.
Yeah, the podcast. Okay, it's the Association
so
Podcast.
bubbly.
The
Yeah.
Ohio State University podcast.
Yeah, the Association Podcast that I co-host with Gretchen Steenstra and of course Jake Toohey, who kind of founded the effort with us. Yeah, so it's really interesting. It started out as a webinar series, actual disruption that we started during.
Webinars are so disruptive.
Yeah,
Awesome. Is that what you said? Yeah.
Dave, we can get into this, Steve.
So
You're
cutting
so
edge.
right. You're so right, Dave.
Webinars.
Such a
I
good.
can mute people, right?
It started out as a
web seminars.
Rebels.
web seminars.
They're the same.
So, they were so structured and so much work. Not that I don't love doing webinars, but the purpose of bringing everyone together and kind of acknowledging what was going on around us, the structured yet slightly more unstructured discussion that we decided to start having around podcasts. We migrated, that from a webinar series into a podcast and never looked back. It's been so much fun.
It's awesome. And next, Joanna, who has been one of the IT leaders in this community since about the same time I was, is built a fantastic business and now has joined the community of podcasters in the last year or two.
Are you talking about me?
I am talking about
Okay.
you.
So
You're
I'm
the
Joanna Pineda.
of which I speak.
Well, I'm also really new to podcasting. I've only been doing it for about 14 months. So I'm honored to be here. I'm Joanna Pineda, CEO and Chief Troublemaker of Matrix Group International. And Ben, like you, this podcast actually came out of a planning meeting for our webinar series. We do a showcase twice a year, and somebody said, we need to tell more of these stories, so let's do a podcast. And I thought, oh God, a podcast. But here we are 14 months later, and what I do is we don't have themes for the podcast. I interview CEOs, chief execs of associations and nonprofits, and I ask them about their CEO journey, and then I ask them what their organizations are doing to thrive. So I never know what I'm going to get in my interview.
That's cool. It's not, yeah. I know we should talk about that for a second too later, about scripting versus frameworking versus just going at it cold. Right. Last but never least, my friend Dave Will.
So many things I want to say. First of all, because I'm bottling up all my little.
Hey, I got to keep you. I know you. So intro.
Was that it? Am I done?
You're done. You're done.
Thank you very much.
What's the name of your podcast, Dave? We'll allow you to say that.
And he asked me earlier, Dave, why are you so quiet? Because I knew when I opened my mouth, that's what was going to happen. Number one, I'm really glad Kiki was the first one to go pornographic in her language, right? Good job, Kiki. Number two, I actually think of the five of us like the Hobbit, the what's it called? The Battle of the Five Armies. Really? Am I the only one? Joanna in the green room, she's talking about.
Wait, who gets to be the Hobbit?
I get called the Hobbit every day. I don't know.
Oh, okay. Ben gets to be the Hobbit.
It's pretty clear.
Who do I get to be?
I'm going to represent the trees.
Nice.
So wait, I am actually curious about what Dave's going for here. So keep going, David.
No, that was the end.
That was the all right.
My name is Dave Will. I'm the co-founder and CEO of PropFuel. I have a podcast called Association Strong with my brother Tom Morrison. And Association Strong is the intersection of entrepreneurship meets associations. Now that was the original premise. And the reason for that is Tom and I, we've been on a number of vacations together. We're friends, and our spouses have met and hung out and stuff. So we have a professional relationship, but we also have this personal relationship. And we'd be sitting on the beach with a cocktail, and we'd be debating and arguing over exactly the stuff we talked about in the podcast. So we thought, wouldn't that be fun to record it? And now we bring guests in, and we ultimately, at the end of the day, what's in the back of my mind is that intersection of where associations and entrepreneurship meet. I'd like to elevate both of those if we can.
So that's what's kind of cool about, you said the Battle of the Five Armies. I don't see us battling anything.
If you remember correctly, a lot of them came together, Dave.
A lot of them did?
Yeah. Well, okay. the elves and the
elves and the dwarves and the humans
and the trees
hobbits.
and the hobbits.
And the trees kicked
You know?
in.
The elves seem cool. I think I want to be an elf.
They're a little
I'll be an elf.
arrogant for me, though. I mean, they're like,
I am too.
They're
So,
beautiful.
It's great. It's
Just
great
like
assets.
Kiki.
I think Dave's trying to get us back. Go ahead, Dave.
Oh yeah.
All
Sorry.
right, so yeah, before we go too far into the lore and legend, and they weren't friends before. We've all been friends a long time, and we've all known each other a long time. So what I think is cool about it, though, is we all do have a different focus, right? And I think what spurred part of this, even getting this together, or when I was trying to get us together at annual, was I don't, and hey, this sounds really bad. I don't know if people are paying enough attention to us. Hey, everyone, look over here. We're putting together this content. It's not sales content. It's not marketing content.
Correct.
It's just discussions going on in the association community that, we have different focuses around success versus what, culture and, like you said, the intersection of entrepreneurship. Ben, I'm still not sure what you're doing. But other than that, it's all good and it's good content. No, Ben, you guys have great, awesome conversations. We all do. And I just wanted to make sure that it's out there. Talk a little bit about what maybe one of your favorite podcasts that you've done so far. And then we can talk a little bit about what we're learning as we're talking to all these people, right? We're out there having these conversations. Let's share those thoughts. What's your favorite podcast, Mr. Will? Dave, what's one have you done that you love the most, or feel like is a good example?
So we've had it's pretty inconsistent, which is a theme I'm hearing there in this group, where sometimes we'll have association execs talk about their association, their issues, and how they resolve them. And then other times we'll have some keynote speakers talking about generational issues or looking into the futurists talking about what's coming down the pike. Those are always super interesting. But the ones that I find the most interesting are the regular association execs. Nobody that's going to get up on a stage and talk. It's somebody that we pull in and really pull out some intricacies about how they're doing their job that's unique, that everybody could learn from. And one that comes to mind is Guillermo Ortiz de Zarate. Do you guys know G?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah, so he goes by G. He works for NCARB, National Council of Architectural, what's the RB? Registration boards, I think it is. And I might have the R wrong.
I think it's review, but anyway.
Review boards, you're right. Yep. And so NCARB is obviously an association, but they have, under G's tutelage, they've created this thing called Lineup. And Lineup is basically a for-profit software company. And they're not the only ones to do this. There's a lot of associations that have created this for-profit entity as a revenue-driving entity under the umbrella. So it's uncommon, but it's a really successful revenue driving machine for a lot of organizations. And coming from my perspective, where I'm interested in taking entrepreneurship and finding that intersection of where it meets with associations, I mean, that's a perfect example. And so I can think of one or two podcasts like that, but the one I did with Guillermo was called, it started with Innovative Ideas, and then the title went on, but it was back in 2022, Innovative Ideas.
And you, just speaking of this, you also host the podcast for EO, right?
Oh yeah. So I have another podcast. That's actually something I'm super entertained by because of the so it's called EO360, Entrepreneurs Organization 360. It's another association I belong to. So I belong to two associations, ASAE and Entrepreneurs Organization. And for EO, I do their global podcast, 18,000 members worldwide. And I've had some really, really cool guests, but it's like a human interest story. I've interviewed the founder of Reebok, like the guy that actually came up with the name Reebok. Super, super cool. Interviewed a lot of really interesting people. This guy on the cover of Time magazine that is reversing age. I think his name is, I don't know his name. His name doesn't matter, but he's reversing age. That's what matters. And then who's the guy? Paul Hutchinson did a movie recently on rescuing abducted children.
So you're having a breadth of conversations there too, but your intersection is still entrepreneurship, which is cool.
Oh yeah. No, that's
bring that to this community.
the general. It doesn't always go into how to be a better entrepreneur. They're not really how to as much as to really get to the core of what makes an entrepreneur tick. And from the association side, what makes it a thriving association tick. That's what I'm going for.
That's awesome. And I don't want to hog the MC role, so to speak. So, you know, I've never known anyone sitting here to be the least bit shy. So I know I started by kind of round robining it, but don't obviously pipe
It's all
in and
yours,
pipe up.
DC.
I'm usually drinking on a Friday afternoon in my podcast, so I'm hanging back right now this morning, waiting for you guys to point at me.
You're going to nurse it this morning.
Yeah, a
is
little
that right? Yeah. This is Irish coffee.
Coffee.
Is it hard to do this sober, Ben?
It's, it is different. That's all. I'll say, right?
Sorry, Mike was muted. I just have to say, for anybody that's watching this, we're joking. We're all joking together. There's a lot of joking with the podcasters. That said, there's a lot more joking in this part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and let things roll on. But I do want you to, if you're watching this on LinkedIn as a replay, or if you're watching it on YouTube, go ahead and in the comments, even if you're watching it as a replay, just let me know a little bit. Let me know you're watching, and let me know what podcasts you like to watch or listen to, and when and where do you usually listen to them. That's one of the big questions that we were asking, and one of the questions we're always interested in is just to figure out where our listeners are really coming in from, and when and how they like to listen to our podcasts. Not all of these are available on video, for example, so not everyone can watch the podcast like what we're doing right here. But it is interesting for folks to know if you do prefer to listen or watch some of these podcasts, and when and where it's the easiest for you to do that. So go ahead and let us know in the comments, even if you're watching this as a replay and not watching it live. All right, back to the show.
Let's give you a minute to get a couple more sips and hear from
I'm
Kiki
good. No,
a little bit about
it is. Well, I want to jump in with one point. Okay, there's
Awesome.
my opening. Thanks, Dave. So it is funny to think back and think, well, what are my favorite episodes? I think I have favorite episodes and I have favorite guests, right? And like, you're not supposed to pick a favorite child, right?
Exactly.
But it's really interesting. Like, we've had some really incredible people like Dr. Jason Leahy from Illinois Principals Association, who is very much an intrapreneur, who launched ELN, which is Ed Leaders Network, inside of IPA as this extension. Like, we all work with associations. Illinois Principals Association is a state-focused principals association, and yet he launched this grant program to create micro-credentials and go to colleges and get them to accredit those things, and then like drag this thing across 16 other states and like replicate the model. He's built this juggernaut of a business inside this little state education association. And so for me, I look at people like that, and he just makes me want to get up and run a 5K and like start 10 more startups. And then you get people like Ron Moen on, who, and what was the name of Ron's episode? The diamond in the end is worth the pressure in the process. And if everyone here knows Ron. So I loved his episode because he got up and kind of moved around his office a little bit with his laptop and showed us some things that were on his whiteboard and some prompts that he uses with his staff to create this super productive culture. And it's just been so much fun looking at the dynamic of like the different topics. Like, we just had this big ADA topic that we did recently. We had this woman that was recommended by another guest who I'd never met before, that goes in and does consulting around conference, ADA compliance and things like that. And which is a very different vibe than when I had Dave Will on, or Rob Katchen, who's like super about his mission. over at AAP. So for me, like, I have favorite episodes and I have favorite guests, and that's one of the things where you especially having multiple co-hosts too. I love we have this cadence and these features within our podcast, but there's kind of an unstructured nature of it, and man, I freaking love it.
Did you say intrapreneur earlier? What is an intrapreneur?
So if you Google it, I'm sure it'll give you a definition, but what it is,
actually, I'm gonna go
someone that
that
creates from within instead of what you might think as an entrepreneur to create something kind of wholly singular. He created something new from within
a structure, like an existing organization.
Yeah. And so for him, like, and I've known him for a long time, he was a customer of mine at the AMS company that I worked for, and then he followed me to my consulting business. And when I left that, he followed me to my next consulting business. And when I took over the community software business, he followed me there as well. And so we probably all have some of those customers, right? But to the extent that you get to know someone and watch them grow their career and build things alongside while you're doing it, and kind of do these things that are so different and yet so similar and parallel and feed off each other and learn from each other. I feel so fortunate to kind of be able to like wrangle those conversations together, right, and share them with people.
And something you just said, Ben, around the whole piece of we all know Ron Moen.
Yeah.
It's just kind of it's almost like a toss away comment, but it's so true. And your part about following, and somebody followed me here, and we've all known each other for so long. I feel like a lot of people outside this community don't get that. They don't get that in whatever community they're in. There's these connective points and tissues that have happened for so long that we've got to see each other. I mean, Kiki, you're a Delcorian alumni, right?
I am.
Back when you started the Sweet Spot, which was before podcasting. Well, podcasting wasn't a thing yet; it existed, but
I was live streaming, man.
Yes, you were ahead. You were webinaring before webinars, and so so we've all been together so long. So these trends that we've seen that we can talk through, and that's and I feel like some of that's what you do on Association Chat, is connect from the past to the future, to the present, and to the future when you're having these conversations.
I'm pretty sure I dated every one of you guys at one point.
When did you date Ben? Wait, was that before?
We had two go-arounds.
After Kiki, us. Yeah. It really is a lot of interim.
I knew it was a risk.
It's a throwaway
thing. There's going to be a cat fight soon.
This is the thing when you like, I met somebody new at the gala for the association Power of A. See, it's before noon. So I met someone as I was leaving, and you would have laughed so hard, Kiki. And she was this it's a beautiful woman, and we're all standing there, and I'm next to Cynthia and a handful of other people. I think Gretchen might have even been outside. And this woman was like, this is my second day at the association, and I'm new to the association market. And I'm standing around, and we had all been drinking. Most of us had known each other for years. And I looked at her and I said, welcome to the show.
Right. That's it. Welcome to the family.
It is a little bit of a throwaway, that connective tissue that you mentioned, Dave. Like it is people that come in from outside the industry wonder how some of these everyone knows each other, and I take it for granted a little bit how long it took and how hard it was to kind of like learn the industry, learn the people, and learn all of it in the dynamics and who to look to learn to and all of those things. So
isn't that part of why we're podcasting, right? Because there's all these great stories about how people are moving up through the ranks at associations. And there are all these stories that aren't being told. I think each of us has had guests where we were blown away by what they said. And you're thinking, why isn't this a session at annual? Why wasn't this discussed at the tech conference? And I think that's part of why we're doing all this storytelling. Hey, speaking of storytelling, Ben and Dave, you talked about kind of entrepreneurship. What I have found in my podcast in the last, 14 months is the organizations that are thriving are reinventing their organizations and bringing an entrepreneurial mindset, often to their governance, but much more often to their conference, where they're saying, Some of them have said, you know what, the conference is great, but we needed to blow it up. Others have said, we've seen this slow decline, and it's the slow decline that's dangerous, right? Because you don't think it's a huge crisis, and then it is, 5 years later when all of a sudden you're at a third of the attendance you normally have. But it's the organizations that have been willing to blow things up that are doing really well.
I love that point because I just met a woman. I was at a holiday showcase a week or two ago, and no, a week ago, and we had this conversation about change and embracing change. And I think what you just described is a cultural thing at an organization. You have some organizations that resist change. Sometimes it's evident in the IT department, and sometimes it's evident down over in membership or marketing, where they're just trying to keep their head above water and they're doing everything the way they know how because it's the easiest path. And then you have other organizations that are looking for ways to change things. And as a lot of entrepreneurs say, they're working on the business when they're looking for change, not in the business, which is a phrase I kind of get sick of, but it's a pretty good phrase. We got to remember to work on the organization, not in the organization all the time.
Yeah, there's certainly, and part of what you just, we're talking about connective tissue, and we're talking about, history, and then you're pulling out this theme of the change and the reinventing. One of my favorite CEOs that I talked about going to their staff and saying, listen, we're not a nonprofit association. We are here's our mission, here's what we're in business for, digital company that happens to be a 501c, right? That's what we are. We are a digital first company. We're providing all the product, services, events, value proposition through our digital platforms. Stop thinking about certification, meetings, accreditation, continuing education, et cetera, standards as our product, right? That's just how we get to what our mission is. But we need to make sure we're a digital company first. And it sounds, some of us cringe, some of us embrace, the digital transformation phrase. But the bottom line is that's where we're talking about not just having the same old meeting and watching the 5 or 4% attrition happen year after year. So I love that you're sharing that you're seeing these reinventing organizations.
Actually, if we're talking about, I'm totally jumping in and bringing this back to a question that you asked earlier, which is about, sort of the themes and best episodes and stuff like that. I've noticed that for Association Chat, so this is where I want to jump in, and I am going to pause for now. And this is the end of episode 1. It's been running we're about halfway through. And I actually really thought that what Dave was talking about was a really excellent point. And in the conversation at the time, it reminded me of something else. And I jumped back into something he brought up about favorite episodes from before. But this idea of what are associations and what can they be is something that I think is a really great thought to end this particular part of the episode on. And we'll do part 2 next week. And so in the meantime, what I would love to know is, what did you think about this episode? What are your favorite association podcasts? What has resonated with you so far? And when and where do you actually listen to these podcasts? Do you listen to them? Do you watch them? Is it something you do in the gym? Is it something you do on a commute? Or is it something you make time to do while you're sitting and doing your work in the office? You tell me. Tell me what you do. I would love to know. I would love to know in the comments, or if you want to email or reach out, then let us know. But one thing that I always know is that I appreciate you. I appreciate the time that you give to Association Chat. And I ask that you keep asking questions to learn every day, because as Joseph Campbell once said, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So keep seeking, keep looking, everyone. I hope everybody is safe for the rest of the week. Hope you have a fabulous Friday and weekend. And then next week, we're going to come back with a continuation of this episode. And I promise I'm going to try to learn how to stop interrupting people. I don't know if I can promise to do it, but I'm going to try to learn how to stop doing it so much. How about that? All right. Thanks for listening, folks. And I will catch you next week.